What's up, YouTubeaholics? Hope you're ready for some more Dimir Shadow action. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel down below. Hit the subscribe button. Lets you know whenever new videos are going live, so you can come check them out again. Words are tough. Anyway, we'll have a link to the deck list down below. As always with these like backlog videos, it might not be the list on screen, but it'll be my current Dimir list, as well as a link to the Control Freak Discord if you want to come check it out, ask questions about anything Shadow related or not. Link to the Twitter account in case you want to know whenever news live streams are happening. That's the first place it gets updated. And finally, a link to the stream itself over on Twitch, twitch.tv/the_control freak, CNTRLFREAK, you get it. But if you want to check out like live streams of this and other Shadow videos or other Shadow content, as well as other decks, that's a cool place to check out. Anyway, let's get into the video. Again, these are all happening like as I'm testing Shadow of Mortality. So video happens, I throw it up on here, we move on with our days, and everybody goes home happy. So let's go ahead and hop into the first match. So we're on the play. First hand, I'm pretty sure it was just like nothing going on. You do have to be careful. Like this deck does play a lot more of a control role than other Shadow variants, but you still have to know like if your deck's just not doing anything, that's something to be wary of. Like you can't just keep a hand that dirtles for a while. On the play, you can get away with a little bit more, but on the draw, especially, like Ragavan's too prominent. We now have to deal with things like Delighted Halfling on turn one. So you better have some interaction or something to do. Either way, this is before we moved the steam vents to a hallowed fountain. As you might have seen before, we are running the hallowed fountain now because it enables cleave on Path of Peril out of the sideboard, where steam vents does not. So opponent gets a Cauldron complete. I could have countered the Stoneforge Mystic, but honestly, like Cauldron is not that scary. Like I'd rather just draw cards and hit my opponent in the face. Maybe kill a Stoneforge and just make this Cauldron irrelevant. Opponent goes for the Ephemerate. We've got the Stubborn Denial, and now we just get to hold up Drown in the Lock. So unless something is going to be killing us, probably don't care about countering it all that much. Opponent says no blocks. We say cool, take 12. Now you're down one less land. We've got double, what's it called? Double chump block duty. I could go for a, like letting them resolve the sword, go to equip, and go to kill the Fervent Champion, but they've already shown me Ephemerate. And since they've already shown me Ephemerate, I don't want to deal with them potentially ephemerating the Fervent Champion and then attacking through afterwards. Here we get to dress down the Fervent Champion because it does not lose the power and toughness buff. It's still a 3/3, but it loses the ability to deal damage, draw a card. So it's just like a vanilla 3/3. See, sideboarding against red white Stoneblade. Anything that says killer creatures coming in. And I'm usually boarding out some number of like Wraiths and Thought Seizes in a matchup like this. I just don't want a bunch of those like clogging my hand late game. Consider does find a Fatal Push, so we're able to answer the Stoneforge. They might resolve a sword here. Looks like they're not going to. Maybe a little afraid of Stubborn Denial. But because they decided to hesitate, we get an opportunity to get down Shadow, hold up Counterspell. Feast and Famine, a little annoying, so we're just going to mop that up. They do get to Ephemerate of Solitude, but they're down to only one card in hand. So they can hit us with this Solitude if they want. We're going to get to untap and deploy a new threat. And that's all we kind of want here, is to be able to get down something here. Which I think we actually get down. No, could have gotten down 2 somethings, but honestly, 1 is fine. We'll play out some threats eventually. I could play out the Shadow, but if my opponent gets another Solitude, exiles my Shadow of Mortality, it would just kill my Shadow. And I don't really want that to happen, so. Fury, I was definitely not expecting there. But at the end, like, I thought it was going to be a bolt or something and I could summon it all. But at the end of the day, like, I'm fine with Fury because I do just get down Shadow afterwards. So, not the biggest loss in the world. On to match number 2. We're on the draw. We do have a very, very land heavy first hand. So, we're going to throw that back. Here we do get a couple drowns. We see Bloodstained Mire, which thankfully opponent doesn't have a Ragavan on turn 1, because that would be a nightmare. Little Dauthi Voidwalker action. So we cannot drown in the lock the Dauthi unless they put another thing on the stack. Unless we draw a Fatal Push, that can answer a Dauthi. So we'll just take this hit. Try to see what the next thing happening is. So now we get to like counter this Dauthi, untap, Fatal Push the first Dauthi, and then have Drown in the Lockup, which, since they've now shown us this fantastic fetch land, this Drown in the Lock can counter up to a 4-drop, so like an on-curve Grief. So really, really works out there. Also can counter a Spyro. Pretty happy countering that one. So all we're really looking for at this point is a threat of some variety. Back-to-back Spyro eats back-to-back counters. So they're empty-handed, but do have Spyro tokens. So at moments like these, we kind of wish we had a companion, because I don't know how much you've gotten to play against or with companions, but they're pretty solid when everybody's at like an empty board state and you just want that one more thing to do. So do find a Murktide. They get back Spyro tokens, but at the moment, at least, we're winning the race. Fury's fine because we've got the answer to that in hand. And then we are going to start clocking our opponent. So hopefully we can get this game over with before things get too terrifying. Grief is fine because, again, we're outracing this. I very much like hard casting Street Wraith here. Like, it can't block the Grief, but it blocks one of the tokens, which means they're dealing 4 to us. We're not dead to like Lightning Bolt, something like that. So up against Scam. Sideboarding. Usually I'm trimming like a couple Thoughtseize, couple Street Wraith, bringing in extra Dress Downs, bringing in extra Fatal Push out of the board, Shieldred's Edict, stuff like that. Really want to be able to answer a turn 1 Ragavan. That's like top priority. So opponent Thoughtseizes, takes our Thoughtseize, but leaves us with Shieldred's Edict. So we do have some stuff we get to do with that. They do get a Hearse down, which is okay because this is like one of the times I talk about with Shadow of Mortality, where, hey, you've got this this Grave Hate going that shuts off Murktide, but we've got a really big 2-mana 7/7 that dodges that Grave Hate. So here we have the ability to go to life total down low enough to get this Shadow of Mortality. Since Shadow dodges like Lightning Bolt and Fury, doesn't dodge a Scam Fury, but dodges the straight up Fury. So we at least get to kind of fight over that a little bit. like target, hey, we need to answer terminate. That's like the thing. Everything else is pretty whatever. Um Maybe I should have just attacked and passed the turn with like counterspell plus dress down or something. But I was kind of thinking that if my opponent plays a creature I care about, then I just have counterspell, a la grief. If they don't play a creature I care about, then I can sit on dress down or hearse or Shieldred's Edict. Um, dress down does kill unlicensed hearse, regardless of how big it is. So very good piece of information to have in your back pocket. So round 3, up against Jund, like actual factual Jund mid range. This has become like a reasonable matchup because honestly, a lot of the stuff that they have access to, you don't care that much about, like Ren and 6, Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt, usually Ragavan, Goyf, like all those are really manageable. Obviously, this opponent's playing Terminate and Riveteer's Charm in the main deck, and that poses a much bigger problem for us because them having more answers to a Murktide's obviously pretty unfortunate. So all I'm really trying to do here is whittle my opponent down to a point where they want to fire off Riveteer's Charm for the card advantage, and then I can get down Murktide and hopefully dodge any sort of interaction there. So we see like here, they cast the Riveteer's Charm. Fortunately, they found a follow-up Thoughtseize, so we got to take our Murktide anyway, and we just have like no way of dealing with this Ren before it ultimates. So we're going to game 2. But against a lot of these, like, I'll just consider them red, black, X mid range, like Scam and Jund mid range in this case. Against decks like this, Murktide and Shadow of Mortality are both very, very excellent threats because they dodge a significant amount of the common removal. The Fatal Pushes, Lightning Bolts, Unholy Heats, uh, Abrupt Decay you see out of Jund from time to time. They're usually outgrowing like Goyf. A lot of times, Murktide and Shadow Mortality both can stand in front of a Fury. So that's a really big deal. But all you're trying to do is like whittle your opponent down from a lot of their heavy spot removal, and then eventually like land a Shadow of Mortality and try to go to town from there. So that'll end up impacting a lot of my my like Thoughtseize decisions, is saying, hey, do you have something in your hand right now that answers the Shadow of Mortality, even if I don't have one yet? If so, I might want to go ahead and take that. Um, Also, let me pause real quick because I did want to talk about um, priority on things. Like, my opponent's got a Ren in 6. This Ren is 2 turns away, 3 turns away from ulting. I do not care about this Ren. Like, the Ren is just ticking up getting a land. I already know they have lands in hand. There is zero reason whatsoever to waste an attack knocking this Ren off the board. Like, Ren doesn't matter. If they win the game, it's not going to be because they hit their next 2 land drops. So keep in mind when you get in these situations, like, hey, I don't have the luxury. Think of it like more like this. Every attack that you spend at that Ren and give your opponent an extra turn is an extra counter spell you need to have to fight over something that's going to stop you from killing them. So when you have these opportunities, and I'll do it a lot of times with Teferi as well. Like if Teferi came down and bounced something, I'm probably not swinging at that Teferi the next turn. unless I just have like 2 or 3 counter spells in hand. Because ultimately, like, that Teferi ticking up doesn't matter to me. Like, anything that they could do, they're already going to be able to do, whether that's Solitude or Leyline Binding or something like that, or if they bounce something and I replayed it, and then the next turn they ticked up and they had like indomitable creativity. They could have creativity anyway, and I wouldn't be able to interact with it. So a lot of times it's not worth that extra attack, fogging yourself there to try to fight over like a planeswalker activation. Just hit your opponent in the face, get your other threat down, close out the game. Yeah, so we saw like first hand, a whole bunch of lands, nothing going on. Second hand, no lands. Third hand, a land. Obviously, not having a black source is a little rough, but kind of hoping that our opponent will just hit us into shadow range. Like maybe we find a black source off this consider. Unfortunately, once we see stubborn denial, we can't really safely go for the consider anymore. So we have to go to our turn and pray, which we do not hit anything good. Yeah. Opponent playing Jund and Blood Moon is a heck of a combination that I wouldn't have played around anyway. But that's what happens when you stumble in Modern. Like you get pretty punished. But so be it. That's how it happens. I think we're going on to match number 4. Sounds right. Pretty good opening hand. We've got double consider, fatal push. We've got a Murktide. Um, but yeah, what I was gonna say earlier is this is a reason that I've really enjoyed kind of working on this Dimir archetype, is because you have an uncanny ability with this deck to really convert yourself from like the control mid-range plan to the aggro get a threat down plan. So Leaf Crowned Elder, rub against Elves. Um, and not a lot of decks are able to really do that, where you say, hey, I recognize turn 1, turn 2 that my opponent is a slow combo deck or a control deck, and I need to become the beatdown. Well, I have like Street Wraiths and Thought Seizes and Shadows, and I can play out a 4/4 Murktide if I have to, whatever the case is, just to get the pressure going. And I think that's huge out of this deck. Like, just being able to turn the corner. Let me go back through these mulligans. I kind of like that first hand. I'm wondering why I decided to throw that back. So I had a drown, consider, wraith, bunch of counter spells. Yeah, I think I should have just kept this hand. Uh, I think my reasoning was I don't have an answer to a devoted druid on turn 2 on the draw unless they like fetch twice. But I think I should have said like thoughts or wraith, fetch, consider gives me enough looks at like a fatal push to figure something out. Second hand was like the same thing but even worse because I don't have the wraith and the consider. Third hand, no lands. Fourth land or hand, yeah, we're going down low. Um, oh wait, no. I see why I threw back the first hand, because I'm against elves. I'm not against devoted company. My opponent is just like elves with the devoted druid combo in there. So here, opponent gets infinite mana. I'm gonna make them show me a win condition first, which they War Master, that kills me. So they can just pump it infinitely. But I'm gonna make them show me the win condition. And game 3, pretty good hand. Sideboarding against elves, like stubborn denial Stubborn Owl's coming out. I might trim a Wraith. Maybe. But Stubborn Owl's the big one just for like Fatal Push, EE, Path of Peril. Something like that. Thoughtseize. Really, really good pickup here. They decide to endurance me, which is fine because I've got Shadow of Mortality. See Elvish Archdruid. See Quirion Ranger. Did we see Quirion Ranger? Maybe. I did make a mistake here on this turn. So my opponent untaps and plays another War Master. And I could just like counter the War Master. But my thought was, okay, the War Master enters, it makes a token, and I get to EE and just like wipe out the two War Masters and leave them with a token. I didn't realize that, oh, the first one triggering triggers the second one. And so the reason that's significant is if you look at the math here, if I pop EE and my opponent like next turn attacks all, then I'd be taking 3, blocking 1, and then the turn after they attack with those 3, I take 2 and I'm dead. If they had 2 tokens in the Quirion Ranger and they attack for 3, I take 2. Then they attack again with those 2, I take 1, and I'm still alive. So that third token is significant because it gets them to lethal attacking around the Shadow of Mortality. Which means I have to start devoting like Drowning the Locks to killing creatures, killing tokens that I didn't necessarily want to do before. But obviously finding a shadow here really changes up a lot of that math. Now if my opponent attacks out, they're dead on the backswing, so they can't do that. So now I get to go back to devoting my counter spells to creatures. My opponent is at 12, so they're not in double chump mode yet, but they do have to chump 1, and that puts them into double chump mode. They have Quirion Ranger, which can untap an elf on their turn and then untap another elf on my turn. So that does give them a couple chump blocks. Also puts me dead to a lord here, but thankfully they don't hit it, so we get away with a nice little win there. Elves, really any of the tribal decks like elves, goblins, merfolk, traditionally very tough matchups because we just don't have a lot of tools to beat decks that are going wide like that. You could run more Path of Peril if you really thought that was like a huge aspect of your meta. So here, opponents playing out a bunch of hierarch effects. I really thought they were infect until I saw Strangleroot Geist and Questing Beast. And then I was like not sure at all what they actually were. See this treetop village as well. I believe I should have just shocked in the watery grave and gotten down the Shadow of Mortality because I end up taking this hit for 6 when I didn't need to. Like I couldn't have held up Archmage's Charm, but I think I should have just said like, so be it. I can't hold up Archmage's Charm. Whatever. Instead, now I'm having to chump block this, which is obviously not fun. I could Archmage's Charm and steal the Noble Hierarch, but I think that's like a play to not lose, not a play to win. My play to win is drawing, finding a threat that can outgrow the Hierarch, and then dealing with it. So I know people who have been around the stream a lot have heard me talk about that plenty of times, like playing to win versus playing to not lose. And usually it's like, it's pretty identifiable. If you're making a play for the sole purpose of surviving another turn, but not for the sole purpose of getting you to a position to win the game, then it's probably not a great play. Um, yeah, opponent having like turn 2 or 3 choke here is lights out for us, because all we can do is try to get a Murktide down. If they have an answer to Murktide, or if they have like they have this aspect of the Hydra, we're pretty just dead. So go ahead, instead of yeah, choke in the year of our Lord 2023. So let's go back to that like playing to win versus playing to not lose thing real quick. So playing to not lose is essentially playing to give yourself another draw step. And most of the time, I think people make that play without the knowledge, or with the knowledge that they don't have an out in that new draw step, but they just like want to see it for whatever reason. Where a lot of times playing to win might be, hey, I put myself in a little bit worse of a situation in the short term, but I actually give myself outs. So, for example, Archmage's Charm taking my opponent's Noble Hierarch might let me trade my new Hierarch for like their Hierarch. Then they get back Rancor. They can strap it up to a guy again. And I'm just kind of like hoping to find something between now and then to get out of that. Whereas if I draw a couple cards and I see like a threat, now all of a sudden I've gone from, hey, I'm stemming the bleeding, to, hey, I'm like actively in a good position. Because now I can stall out against all these hierarchs. I don't have to worry about them going wide with a board of hierarchs, but I have to worry about them finding like another big threat. But if I just take a hierarch, now all of a sudden, like, I'm not great against a go wide board. I'm not great against a big threat. I've just like given up my leverage there. So when you're in kind of a tricky situation like that, just think for a moment, if you're about to make a play, like, is this play actually going to lead to me having a chance to win the game? Or am I just like desperately trying to see one more card, even though that one more card is probably not going to help me? And make your decision based off that. But as always, another Dimir video. Hope y'all are enjoying the content. Um, that's about it. I gave like my whole rundown of the links in this description below at the beginning of the video this time, which I'm trying to do more often because it's good to get that reminder at the front. So yeah, hope y'all have an awesome rest of your day. Stay safe, enjoy some good food and company. Catch y'all back live later. Adios for now.